City Commissioner Ward 2, and I want to begin by just welcoming each of you for being here with us this evening. As I look around, I see people who are vested in this neighborhood, in the corridor, not just recently, but from generations and for families. Tonight, we've come to do several things. One is to talk about the state of development along MLK Corridor, what the challenges are, and what some of the solutions that we're looking at to make development more feasible on the corridor. And so we'll have city staff talking with us about that. You know, when I ran for office, I ran with the intention of affecting affordable housing positively, increasing economic development in Ward 2, and engaging the citizens. And in the first 3 years, you can see some things that are happening in our community, in this neighborhood. And while I can't take full credit for the MLK Recreation Center, as it was already in development, plans had been made. I am certainly more than proud of this facility and it being here for all of us to use. And so as we look at developing along the MLK corridor, I see some business owners here who have businesses on MLK. Mr. Jerry Steele, Steel Boys, Bondsman is here. The Rolex, who have Fresh Scent Laundry. And there are others who I see who are in business who are contributing to our community and to our development. And so the question is, well, why is it taking so long to do something on MLK? And we know some of the answers. The road widening that happened many years ago left short lots, left complications that we are yet to address and to deal with. And so we'll have a staff that will talk with us about that. The road itself is a problem. You're a business owner, you want people to have more than one way to get in and out of your business. And but the good news is we're looking to bring solutions to resolve those problems to help make development better along MLK. But it's going to take citizen involvement, not just this meeting, but ongoing, to be a part of what we will see come to fruition there. One of the first things I did was ask the Department of Transportation to look at how we could have more ingress and egress on MLK. They came back a year later and said, that's a fine road. It's one of the best in Northwest Florida. Well, it's good for highways. It's not good for us. And so we have to keep the pressure on, and citizens have to be engaged in helping us to fight that fight. And another concern is pedestrian safety. So we're pursuing that as well. But we need citizens to be involved in the Metropolitan Planning Organization public meetings to carry that concern in addition to what your elected officials and city staff are doing. The proposal for a grocery store development, when that was issued, that RFP went out, by the time the deadline closed, no one had answered it. And time after that, we had another proposal. So we went back to those who had expressed an interest and said, you know, would you like to bring a proposal? And so we moved with the one that we have. But as those of you who have been following the CRA meetings and the City Commission meetings, the challenges that I just mentioned are also there as well. Highway 77 and Highway 98 are Florida Department of Transportation roads. They're major roadways. And so the stormwater runoff requirements are much more stringent, much greater than what the city has. And so when the city manager comes to talk in just a moment, he'll share with you the things that the City Commission and the CRA have been talking about. So the same challenges that small developers have. There are those who want to open shops because we heard and we know people want to have businesses back on the boulevard, want to be able to shop at not the franchise stores that we see First Street, I mean, we can go right over there. We want shops that small businesses are opening, that people who live in Panama City go into business and they open. We want models, we want more of the kind of business that have been modeled by the Rolex and the Steels that are homegrown and that we enjoy shopping and going to. So a few weeks ago, we had a workshop. City staff presented to us what the possible solutions are that we could employ, and so we're going to talk about that. We've also invited to join us Dr. Cohen from LISC in Jacksonville, and he's going to share with us the kinds of things that his organization has done to help neighborhoods like Glenwood that are in Jacksonville to redevelop. And we took him on a little driving tour this afternoon to see what's going on in Glenwood, to see the potential that we have here. I want to thank Karen Landry, who came and said, let's get the community engaged in an ongoing way so that we can continue to be a part of what comes to reality. Many of you were involved in those charrettes and meetings that were held that got us the Dover Coal Plan. A plan is one thing. Bringing it to fruition, well, that's a whole nother set of action steps. And so that brings us to here where we are tonight. Many residents have told me they want to see investment, but they don't want to lose the character of Glenwood, of the neighborhood. They want grocery options, businesses, housing opportunities. They want vacant lots developed, safer streets. But they also want to preserve the history, culture, relationships, and sense of community that made Glenwood, Millville, and the MLK Corridor special places. And I share those concerns. I don't believe that revitalization means displacement, that it should happen to a community instead of with a community. And I do not believe that families who held property for generations should be left out of the conversation about the future of their own neighborhood. And so that's why tonight is important. Having community meetings means having something to talk about and to move forward toward actions. And that's why this is the time for us to do that now. The studies have been done, we've got some action steps, but what it's going to take for us to get businesses are everyday folk like Mr. Steele and the Rolex who will invest, because government doesn't start businesses. People have said, well, look at what's going on downtown. Look at what's going on in St. Andrews. There are people who are coming out of their own pockets to open the businesses, and that's what we need. That's what we need to be a part of. As many of you know, there are many properties that the city owns, and how we dispose of those properties is going to be key to the character and the history of the neighborhoods where those properties are owned. So that's why we're here tonight. I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. Just by a show of hands, how many of you grew up in Glenwood? Okay. All right. How many of you went to the old rec? All right. And then how many of you come back? Maybe you don't live in Glenwood, but you work here or you worship here. So if you don't live, but you come back to work or you worship here, the MLK Corridor is a part of that. So everybody here this evening has a vested interest. And so we want to present it. But following Dr. Cohen's talk with us, we will have a discussion and we will hear from you as well. So before I introduce the city manager, I do want to acknowledge that with us here this evening is Commissioner Roger Hughes, the Ward 1 Commissioner. We also have city staff that the city manager will acknowledge. And so thank you all for being here this evening and for being a part of moving forward on down the boulevard. And now, the city manager, Mr. Jonathan Hayes.
Thank you so much, much, Commissioner Lucas. And I too just want to add on behalf of the city and our team, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to come and be a part of this. You know, the city the size of our city and the organization that it takes, you know, this organization is bigger than any one person. And so we're extremely blessed with the number of talented staff, many that are here this evening, and we're going to be here for this event. And happy to hang around a little bit afterwards and answer any questions if you really want to get down in the weeds or geek out about some of the planning or the zoning or any of the engineering. So we're joined by Mr. Michael Fuller. You just raise your hand. He's our Director of Development Services. So all of planning and zoning and code compliance and building services falls under him. We have Ms. Stacey Welsh, our City Engineer and Assistant Director of Public Works. Our Deputy City Engineer, Matt DeVito. We've got Juwan Haley, our Planning and Zoning Division Manager. We have Ms. Sheila Brown, our Sheila Ware, our Housing Planning, Housing and Community Services Department Director. And then we have Ms. Brandy Waldron in the back by Commissioner Hughes, who is our Assistant City Manager and the Interim City Clerk Treasurer. So, and we have Ms. Lena Webb, just came in. She's one of our CRA Program Managers, and the Downtown North, which this facility falls in, is inside of that CRA. And then I see that the Honorable Alan Branch, our Mayor, just joined us as well. So, as Commissioner Lucas said, we do have some changes, some challenges that we're dealing with, and but with challenges comes opportunities. And so I kind of want to talk through tonight, you know, the MLK Corridor Development and moving forward. The Commissioner mentioned, thank you. The Commissioner, yes, I choked to that. Sorry. The Commissioner mentioned that these are all the pieces of property that are owned by the city, kind of on that corridor, starting here at 15th Street and going all the way down to Business 98. So you see the city does own quite a bit of property, and it's our desire, and this commission is committed to not really hanging on any property that we don't really need, but instead giving it back to the community, giving back to the commerce of our city so that we can do better for everyone. But the Commissioner did mention that we have had some challenges or some hurdles. We'll go to the next slide. All right, so some of the hurdles that we've seen in the last several years, smaller lot sizes due to previous FDOT acquisition, and also kind of limiting the ability to cut through the streets. The Commissioner mentioned that we have done a lot of reaching out to the state, to FDOT, for a lot of different things. Number one, traffic impact studies, the access plans is something that Commissioner Lucas has pushed for to kind of determine the impact that it's had. Yes, the road might have gotten safer as far as vehicles, but it's had a negative impact on the commerce and the lots all up and down this particular corridor. Also, the number of cut-throughs will reduce, getting across from the west side to the east side. And so we've looked at all those different options, and we continue to work with FDOT to make improvements to improve the development and encourage just better traffic flows for commerce through this corridor. Some of the FDOT stormwater rules, example is right in this area here. You've got US Highway 77 or MLK Boulevard, and also US 98, which is 15th Street. Those are both state roads, and of course Highway 77 is a state road all the way down to Business 98. And so that's the challenge that we face, is that they have, at the state level, much higher stormwater rules than we do as a city of Panama City. They want to kind of look back over a 100-year storm history. And so we started, and I'll get into this in some of the next slides, but we started figuring out how we can kind of control more of our destiny rather than relying on the FDOT. The DEP as well, the Department of Environmental Protection, they have new stormwater rules for lots over 1 acre, nutrient removal requirements, which also adds a level of complexity to the development of this corridor. We've got a high groundwater table. You all know we lost well over 80% of our tree canopy following Hurricane Michael. The trees drink a lot of water, and so that has caused a negative situation as well. Parking demands for businesses. We started trying to think outside of the box how we can identify parking and create flexibility with that, but without pushing necessarily a lot of parking traffic into the neighborhoods. There's going to be people who wouldn't necessarily care for that either. We're also dealing with air property, and understand sewer lines, our stormwater systems. And that has a negative impact on the roads and the sidewalks and the curbs and all of the neighborhoods. But we are in the process right now of spending $350 to $400 million plus in infrastructure. You've seen many of those projects right here in Glenwood. We've seen them down in Millville, over in St. Andrews, downtown, up in Forest Park, and in Venetianville, in that area. And we're still working each and every day in that. And you may wonder, why the heck are y'all doing so much at one time? It's because so much of these are grants or loans with certain requirements, and we have a timeline that we have to do it by. And so our goal is to get those done and take advantage just as soon as we possibly can. And I would just say this, kind of before I move forward, I know, Commissioner Lucas referenced, the development that we're working on with the Sankofa Group and Mr. Hassan on developing the southwest corner of 15th and MLK. And she's correct. I mean, there have been some challenges with the requirements for stormwater being right up against two state roads. We worked very close with him. He has spoke very highly of Commissioner Lucas, of this community, of the city staff that he's worked with hard to try to make it work. But the truth is he does need additional land in order to make his stormwater system. So it is a struggle at this time, and that project is kind of at a stall point as we try to figure out long-term what the desires are and what is the best way to approach this project rather than maybe just one big project. Maybe it's a bunch of smaller projects. So that's what we want to hear and talk about with you all tonight. So some of the recommendations that our staff has been working on and coming up with to try to, again, control more of our own destiny is prioritizing green infrastructure. Our commission, especially the mayor, has been a big advocate for this. Bioretention, such as rain gardens, planter boxes, bioswales, and grass swells. Permeable pavement is something that we've done, both in downtown Panama City and also over in St. Andrews. Green roofs, downspout disconnections, constructed wetlands, and then floating islands. So these are just some ideas that we can potentially entertain as we do look to develop this corridor. We continue to prioritize green infrastructure. We can also do rainwater harvesting, green streets and alleys, tree planting and urban trees, green parking, and land conservation. And so we are looking for solutions, and we have ideas, and our team wants to work very closely with investors and with builders and their engineering teams to make it work. I do want to take a second, though, and talk about the CRA, the Community Development Agency, and we are inside, again, like I said, the Downtown North CRA, and there are some tools that we have put together as well, and so I want to make sure that you're aware of that. We do have a couple of projects that we're looking at doing in the Downtown North CRA in fiscal year 2027. Again, these are just suggestions that staff have forward. The CRA Board and Commission will have to vote on these later this summer in preparation for FY27. With the Watson Bayou cleanup, we have an FY26 environmental study that we want to implement those recommendations and some cleanup projects and then address some of the stormwater runoff issues that we have at that very north part of Watson Bayou. And then also, you may not know that the city recently purchased the very top corner of the southeast corner of 15th and MLK, as indicated on the screen in red. And we're kind of right now in the planning phase and discussing phase what we want to do with that. The city absolutely felt it was the right thing to do, and our commission concurred with that. And so our goal, don't tell them, is to eventually maybe squeeze out the hotel as well and then take that all over for the MLK Rec Center right here at the southeast corner of 15th and MLK. So we want to hear your feedback on that tonight, what you think we should do with that corner lot. I know there's not a real desire for it to be parking, but we realize there is a need for parking for those that might have gotten here late this evening to this event. We need some more parking here. So again, those are just proposed at this point. So additionally, options for reducing redevelopment barriers. Again, stormwater infrastructure planning. Our CRA team is very much ingrained with the city manager's office and our development services team, as well as the public works and engineering team, to try to work together. to invest in the city's plans that address drainage constraints that not only affect this corridor but other parts of the city, creating infrastructure incentive programs, an incentive program to kind of promote maybe some shared or regional stormwater infrastructure and coordinated maintenance that will help remove some of those barriers to redevelopment, and then also provide funding assistance for demolition, site preparation, and redevelopment activities that will eliminate blight and some of the challenges here. And down on the front row, we have a couple of handouts here that I'm going to bring to your attention. We have a tax increment financing program that is eligible inside this corridor as part of the Downtown North CRA. You can come in and you can invest and get a portion of that additional tax benefit to the city rebated back to you. So if you're not familiar with that, we have a flyer on that. We would love to see you apply. Lena, approximately how many have we approved for Downtown North? Do you know? Sorry to put you on the spot. I think it's a few. We've had some in downtown and some in downtown St. Andrews, but we encourage you to learn more about the tax increment financing, where you come in and you invest, and the additional value increase of the taxes of that, you can pay that back to you. So that's a huge benefit to a potential developer. Additionally, I just briefly mentioned we have a new grant that the commission just approved through the CRA probably a month or 6 weeks ago, and there's a grant to do some site prep work if you want. So we can come in here with the CRA dollars, and we can help clear land, we can help do demolition of buildings, we can help, if you're at the beginning of the demolition process, we can help you cut and cap your utilities, and glad to help work with water, power, and light to get any electrical disconnected that may happen. But that's also a site improvement grant that's really available across all 4 of our CRAs. And then additionally, we have a development services flyer that talks about all the work that our development services and planning and zoning does. So I would encourage you afterwards to please do grab one of those flyers that you feel might be relevant. And again, thank you so much for being here. We want to see your feedback. We really want to hear feedback on what you think should be done at that very top corner of the southeast corner of MLK that the city recently purchased, because we don't want to leave it like that for long. That was not our desire in purchasing it. Our desire in purchasing it was to improve this area, and so that's why we did it. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Commissioner Lucas. Thanks for coming out, and we look forward with spending some more time with you here this evening and answering your questions after the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. So as we continue tonight's conversation, I want to introduce someone whose work speaks directly to the questions we are wrestling with here in Panama City. Dr. Pedro Cohen serves as Executive Director of LISC Jacksonville, the Local Initiative Support Corporation. LISC is one of 34 organizations that LISC has throughout the country, and it helps communities strengthen neighborhoods, expand housing opportunities, and support small businesses and build wealth for residents. What impressed me about Dr. Cohen is not simply his title, it's his approach. And he lives in the neighborhood in Jacksonville, and he is a resident expert, if you will, on the road, bringing us his insight and his knowledge. So it's about creating opportunities for families to remain in the communities that they help build, about helping longtime residents preserve and protect family property. The reason we invited him here is because Jacksonville and other communities are models, can be models for us. They face the questions that we're asking now. How do we encourage investment without displacing residents? How do we preserve the character of a neighborhood while creating opportunities for growth? How do we turn vacant lots and underutilized properties into assets that benefit the entire community? And how do we ensure that existing residents have a seat at the table as well as a stake in the future? So Dr. Cohen will come and share, as we say in another circle, he will come in his own way and share with us some inspiration for the work that we have before us. So please, let's give the Panama City Glenwood welcome to Dr. Pedro Cohen.
Well, first and foremost, allow me to say thank you all for having me here today.
control me as it relates, not necessarily to the list, but to what I was seeing was we were asking communities who hadn't been invested in a number of years to, in essence, pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. What I was saying was, there weren't any boots to pull themselves up from. And it's important to, think about infrastructure. When we think about it, we think about it in terms of roads, and sewer, and all those kind of things. But when I think about infrastructure, I think about infrastructure as the people. We had not reinvested, and those were things that we could control.
I am a member of the very first cohort of Project Groups. Both of my grandparents on both my mom and my dad's side live out east. I was born and raised in the same house that my mom and her 6 siblings grew up in.
I'm a native of Jacksonville, Florida. I grew up in this neighborhood. As a matter of fact, I grew up 3 blocks away from here at 1407 Franklin Street. So living here is extremely significant to me. I think home ownership is extremely significant, particularly as it relates to generational wealth, where you are going out recruiting individuals who want to live in the neighborhood, taking them through the Boots program curriculum and giving them an opportunity to access property that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to access if it weren't for a program like Project Groups.
One of the biggest reasons why I love moving to out east is because I am a caregiver for my mother. She has dementia. She's been with me for about 2 years. And the Project Boots program and also being an opportunity to live in a construction home has given me the chance to have a place for her to call home.
So Project Boots is a program where we attempt to bring individuals with financial, intellectual, and social capital, always to be intentional about those 3, and so into those under-resourced neighborhoods. And in order to do so, we encourage them by giving them $10,000 down payment assistance regardless of income.
So once you're selected, you go through a 10-month of what we like to call family wealth creation. That family wealth creation really centers around those things that, quite frankly, you may be a professional, but you never learn in college.
But when it first initiated, when it kicked off that very first meeting, I knew that I made a good choice. The second meeting when we came in, it was a whole nother African-American professional telling us about wealth building. There was another person that came in to tell us about how you should prepare yourself and have a trust in place. Someone else telling us about what kind of insurances you should have. And everybody sounded and looked like me. And it was warm and it was welcoming.
We are really, through our interview process and through our selection process, looking for people who understand that they have a charge to keep, and that charge to keep is usually centered around being a good neighbor first and foremost, but also being an asset to the neighborhood and a point of relief.
Project Boots is simply about bringing it back to under-resourced neighborhoods, but it's also those neighborhoods that are ripe for gentrification. As we know, out east is seeing a surge of activity. There's the stadium renovation, there's the soccer field, there are businesses coming along the corridor. And so it is important to get in front of all of that.
Revitalizing a community like out east, you don't want to gentrify that neighborhood. And that means you don't want to displace any of the neighbors around here. And Roxanne Shante, the hip hop artist, she calls that re-gentrifications.
I was asking people to obviously move into communities that were, in some instances, food deserts, financial deserts, medical deserts. Move back into those neighborhoods while simultaneously competing with an option they have in the suburbs. Well, obviously that wasn't going to work. I also had to deal with appraisal biases that was sort of a leftover from the days of redlining. So there were some systematic things both in place and that we were navigating that I had to work through. And fortunately enough, 6 years later, 5 years later, we have seen that process and got around most of the obstacles that were in front of us.
Project Boots was a very good support system from start to finish. From the first day of our class, where they taught you about the terminology of homeownership, loans, credit score, to even looking out for lenders. It made me feel good about the closing, and that closing was a day I smiled because that closing day was a joy.
I want to say there are approximately 6 or 7 plus residences that are in their homes right now because of Project Boots. I can sit in my living room and watch traffic stop because they haven't seen anything like this out east. They can't believe it because it hadn't been done before. There were restrictions on what you could put up out here, and it was concentrated poverty.
A typical Project Boost participant will be someone who values community. There's someone who bring in resources, not just financial, but social, relationships, etc. And age definitely does not matter. We want them young to old because we want the neighborhood to have the elders as well as the young professionals. And so I think it's just someone who's looking to make impact in the community and to bring the neighbor back to neighborhood.
I mean, we take them on truly what does it mean to not only live in this community, but what does it take to build a legacy of wealth.
And now you get not only residents, but especially the youth. They're able to see more possibility in the neighborhood. They don't have to go outside of that neighborhood to see what possibility looks like. Imagine being able to build your dream home in your dream neighborhood.
So before we get into the specifics here, I want to set the groundwork for our conversation this evening. And it's based upon really 5 things. I come to you in the spirit of love, meaning collectively have an appreciation. We have to have a collective appreciation of the other if we're going to get anything done. The days of it being just a homogenous neighborhood of one race, one sexuality, one belief system are simply no longer. I come to you today in the spirit of hope, meaning that I come with an asset lens rather than a deficit one or a victim mentality. I come to you in the spirit of courage, meaning that this work comes with some risk, and there are simply no safe spaces. I also come to you in the spirit of agency, meaning people want and should be responsible for their very own communities. I live by the creed that no one, and I mean no one, wakes up and says, today is the absolute best day to be king. And then lastly, I come to you in the spirit of community. And I use community as a verb rather than a destination. We must be what we want to see. And so with that being said, here I am. My mom calls me Pedro. My dad calls me Pedro. My employees call me Dr. Irvin. You can call me whatever you like. And I run a company in Jacksonville called LISC. And as she said before, it stands for Local Initiative Support Corporation. And if I were explaining what I do to my dad, I would say I run a social bank. What LISC does specifically is we bring capital to challenged neighborhoods. We do that throughout the entire country. We have offices in places like New York. We have offices in Jacksonville, obviously. I run our entire Florida operation right now. We have offices in communities as small as Greenville, South Carolina. And what you saw was our intentionality about community. We don't do our work in suburbs, quite frankly. Most other communities, again, across the country where we do our work specifically is in challenged communities. So I'm here to bring the story of Project Boots to you all and to share. The beauty of Project Boots is that, it was a community, or still is a community much like the one you all live in today. And Project Boots is the sexy part of our work, but it's really the third leg of the stool. Our work initially centered around, in this particular community, around home repairs. But what we found when we were going to do home repairs on most of the homes in the community, most of the people didn't own title to their homes. I mean, and if you know anything about getting your home repaired, you have to prove home ownership. You have to prove that that house is yours. And what I found was, in talking to residents in the neighborhood, sure, he had been living, or she had been living in the house for 20 years, 30 years, and in some cases even longer, but when it came down to prove ownership, they couldn't, because the house had never been properly probated. And so it made us pivot. And so we launched one of the most aggressive heirs property programs. Matter of fact, I feel very confident in saying we have written the blueprint for what heirs property work looks like across the entire country. And that happened in our Jacksonville office. We've certainly written it for what it looks like here in the state of Florida. And it just from a member standpoint, and I shared this earlier in my meeting with the officials earlier, was year to date we've done and resolved over 2,500 heirs property cases throughout the Jacksonville community. And that's significant. And what we also, I'm also a big fan on what does that mean, resolving heirs property. According to the Brookings Institute, for every case of heir property that we resolve, it equates back to $62,500 to the homeowner. And earlier today, somebody challenged me on that number. How you got to that number? Well, most of the time, in most of these cases, there's no debt on the house. I'm going to use my brother's name. Cedric has been living in our parents' house for 30 years. And my parents had a small mortgage on it. Well, he just continued to pay the mortgage until it was paid off, and then he just continued to pay the taxes. But again, he needed the roof repaired after Hurricane Michael. And he couldn't figure out why they wouldn't put a new roof on the house. Well, it was because, again, it was the heirs property. And so we were able to help people like him get title to their homes. And year to date, we are at about 2,500 of those. So you multiply 2,500 times 62,500, and that's the number that I proudly tout in terms of our work, in terms of heirs property. What we've also figured out that people do once they get title to their houses, and I shared this again earlier, they do three things. One, they immediately get the house fixed. Two, they usually invest in some form of small businesses. So, Cedric has been a lawn guy, and he's pretty good. He's been driving around in, a Ford Blazer with the window up in the back. Now he's bought a hitch for his trailer. Now he's bought that zero radius lawnmower that he always wanted. And then the third thing that we found people do with their money relative to heirs property is they usually send somebody to advance their education. So FAMU gets some of that money. The community college gets some of that money. Tulsa Welding College gets some of that money. That's what they do with the money. So we had to stabilize people in the neighborhood so that they had the title to their homes. That was the first thing we did. Then we were able to circle back and do home repair. What I, understood was I could not sell the idea of this neighborhood as a destination if I have a house next door to a brand new house that was falling down. That immediately created some level of inequity in the neighborhood. I got a new house, you don't, and you can't get your house repaired. And so we were able to start that process there. And then the last thing was we had to make the neighborhood a destination where people wanted to be. One of the things I again understood was that, if you had resources, you generally left the neighborhood. And what did we leave behind? We left behind kids who did not see themselves in us. They simply did not. So now, kids that lived in the neighborhood, they saw themselves as LeBron James. And you got a kid in the 9th grade who's 5'2", and when you say to him, what do you want to be when you grow up? A professional basketball player. And what I understood about all of that is that social media brought those kind of people into these kids' space. And I began to think, what if, and let me be very clear with you all. I grew up and my parents still live in a neighborhood much like this. But the beauty of where I lived at, there was a plethora of possibilities of what I could be. I'm the first generation to go to graduate from high school. I'm the first generation to graduate from college, let alone get a PhD. So I get it. But the beauty of my dad and my mother unintentionally was they put me in a neighborhood where I could be next to the teacher, I could be next to a merchant seaman, I could be next to a lawyer, I could be next to an Indian chief. I had the possibility. But if we fast forward that to today, kids simply see a level set. And so I knew that we needed to find a way to get people, as Dr. Chester said in the video, of capacity to move back into the neighborhood. And I had to do that with some level of incentive. And that was $10,000 over 10 months. You get this down payment, but you have to live here in a residence for a minimum of 3 years. So now we're injecting people back into the capacity, and as Dr. Jameson, you gotta have people, I always say, you gotta have people that's more than just an advocate. That just don't work. I needed an evangelist. And Dr. Jameson is my evangelist. Kids walk past his house, and because of the unique nature of his house, they stop and say, "Man, what you do? What do you do?" And they get a chance to see in real time what education can do for you. Dr. Jameson, what he don't say in the video, and it probably isn't appropriate, was all-star point guard in high school. He was an all-star point guard in college. But his everyday work is he's the executive director for the Human Rights Commission for the city of Jacksonville. The probability of a kid becoming that is more real than them becoming LeBron James. And so you see the evidence of that work. But I also wanted to do this without people being displaced. I had no interest in Miss Johnson, who's been there for 30 years, 50 years, being moved out of her spot. I wanted her to have the option to stay. And so this is the culmination of this. And the final point that I'll make about this work is, you heard them talk about family wealth creation. Again, I told you I was the first person in my family to go to college. And so there was a bevy of stuff that I simply just did not learn. I did not learn it at Morehouse. I did not learn it at the University of North Florida. They didn't teach you that. And I remember thinking, man, to have a will, you got to be rich. That's simply not the case. And so I crafted out the 10 months of family wealth creation based upon practical family wealth creation. What kind of insurance you need? I didn't know that. But I can tell you, being a first college graduate, there's an immediate assumption you know everything. Matter of fact, my mother gave me a card for Father's Day and said, "To the guy who knows everything," and the card had 10 things that she really assumed that I knew. And so I built the class around that. So for 2 hours, once a month, for 10 months, you come and you learn family wealth creation. Another aspect of this that we didn't talk about it here is we bring neighbors into the sessions so we can truly have a deep, honest conversation around what does it mean to live in this neighborhood. Because again, I'm bringing in people from the outside. Aaron and Rudy, they're unicorns. Their family grew up there. But by and large, Michael didn't know anything about this neighborhood. All he knew was he could get a house. He could get a house with $10,000 assistance, and he was going to move right in. But I needed him to understand, what does it mean to live in this neighborhood? Because, while it may inconvenience you as a new neighbor, Tyrone plays his music starting Thursday at 5 o'clock. And it goes well into Sunday afternoon. And just because it inconvenienced you, everybody else around has accepted that. That's normalized behavior. Or the fellas hanging under the tree in the neighborhood, you don't get because you are a new resident and they threaten your well-being, allegedly, to call the police on them. That's their spot, and that's been their spot for generations. So I needed new residents to understand and hear that. Or Mount Errant Missionary Baptist Church of the Risen Sun. Church has been there for 30 years, and it might look a little limp. But them people park on the side of your house every Sunday and have been parking there for generations. You don't get to complain about that. But those are social nuances that I took into consideration that happened throughout our neighborhood that you, as a new resident, needed to be aware of. And so we are very intentional about that. The last thing that we do, and again, it's all around intentionality, is we bring in the elected officials. Now, I haven't been able to get our congressperson or our U.S. senator to come, but everybody from the representative from the local city council, to the school board, to the state rep, they have come through this session to talk about what is it specifically that they are working on behalf of this community. That's an intentional part of our work. So that's the residential side of it. But I also understood that there was a commerce side of it that I needed to invest in. And I told the group earlier, I was going to say this. We say we want grocery stores. But when we peel back the layer, we really want Walmart. I mean, I told you I come in love. And I come in agency. But if I were to say to you, I'm going to give you a grocery store, and that grocery store is not going to sell beer, they're not going to sell lottery tickets, they're not going to sell cigarettes, and they're not going to sell white t-shirts. Would you shop there? And the experience that I've had in putting grocery stores into neighborhoods is no. We won't. I shared this earlier, and my first experience with grocery stores, because this was 20 years ago, I was extremely naive. You know, I was like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a butcher shop to sell meat up the street in the neighborhood. And this is all walkable. I'm going to get the local farmers market to accept EBT and food stamps. EBT is food stamps. They're going to accept that. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to leverage my superpower and get public transportation to bring the trolley through the neighborhood. And if people wanted to go, they could call a special number and the trolley would come and pick them up and take them to the farmers market. Now, the one thing you need to understand about the farmers market that's adjacent to Newtown on Success Zone, where I first started this work, which is right behind Edward Waters College. If you've ever been to Jacksonville, just think of, if you know where Jacksonville is and you've been to Jacksonville, you know where EWC is. If you haven't, think about every other HBCU post 2000, and they all were in urban neighborhoods. Right? So y'all know what the challenge was. Well, the bus would come to the neighborhood and pick people up. And we did this, I got money from the state, I got money from the mayor's office, I got money from everywhere. It lasted 6 months. Because people from the neighborhood didn't want to have disaggregated shopping. They didn't want to go to the farmer's market. They wanted to go to the grocery store and buy their groceries along with their cigarettes, their beer, and their white t-shirts. And I'm joking about the white t-shirt thing, but if you lived in the hood, you know what you know every corner store got white t-shirts. I come from a family whose dress shirt is a white t-shirt. You can go call my cousin right now, and I can say to him, hey man, I need you to ride with me somewhere. And he'll say, come pick me up, and we got to stop so he can get a shirt. Just what it is. And, you know, I feel so comfortable talking about this stuff just because this is my reality. I literally get the luxury of doing the work that immediately benefits my family, my friends, the community that I come from, and somebody pay me to do it. And so I take pride and I'm very careful in how I do it. But I asked that question again around the luxury of a grocery store because that was my first experience with truly a grocery store. The second thing that we did was I convinced the corner stores to carry fresh fruits and vegetables in them because they weren't going to go get them from the farmer's market, so we couldn't make corner stores. Guess what happened? The food, the vegetables went bad because people wouldn't buy it from them. So I always say that when we're talking about what a grocery store looks like, the reality is in historic East Side, we do have a grocery store. But what we didn't do is I did not want to shut down the Arab brother who had been there when there was no grocery store for 20 years selling his wares because we were able to put a grocery store there. So what the grocery store does not carry, it does not carry lottery tickets, it does not carry beer, it does not carry wine, it does not carry cigarettes. It don't even carry soda or sugary drinks. You can get all of that from the Arab brother across the street. And, you know, you can get all of it from the Family Dollar right up the street from both of them. And so it's a true grocery store. And so when I do these kinds of presentations, specifically when there's a bubbling issue relative to a grocery store, I always ask the community, what kind of grocery store do you want? And what kind of grocery store, if you truly, truly, truly being honest with yourself, would you support? But again, I think all of this is for naught if we cannot make communities like this destinations where people want to live. And I'll end with this. All of the houses that we finance, we finance the development of said houses. All of the houses that we finance in terms of development, the caveat is they have to be sold at an affordable rate. You cannot sell a house. I think right now the number for affordability in the state of Florida is around $330-ish. You cannot sell a house for more than $330,000 with our money. And so, you know, there is some accountability on the part of us. It's some accountability on the part of the developer. And so there's our story, and I don't believe that we're doing something so unique that it can't be done here, but I think it has to be done with a level of intentionality, not only on the part of the municipality, but on the part of the residents and everybody involved here. It cannot be a one-sided story. So again, thank you all for having me, and I am here to answer as many questions as you all have for me. But again, thank you all so much, and that's it.
So thank you, Dr. Cohen. We've come to the question and answer portion of our evening here tonight and our time. So we've got a microphone there. If you'd like to come forward, ask any questions about what the staff has presented, what Dr. Cohen has presented, and Mr. Shack.
Hello. I grew up in Glenwood. And when I grew up in Glenwood, we were talking about legacy property. more than 90% of the people who lived in Glenwood owned their homes. They owned their homes. From the 40s into the 70s, more than 90% of the people who lived in Glenwood owned their own home. Most of the people who lived in Glenwood were entrepreneurs. Everything you had downtown, you had it was a self-sustaining community. We had hotels, restaurants, automobile shops, service stations, swimming pools, theaters. Most of the people who left here, whether way they call it, like you and I look around and see a lot of people, we didn't come back. You know why we didn't come back? I got a degree in math. There are people here that are doctors, lawyers, engineers. So when you graduated from college and you came back to Panama City, what kind of job were you going to get? How much would it pay? So there was a mass migration of people, myself, and I look around here and I see the same people. A lot of people that grew up with me and went to school with me didn't come back. We were in college, we were in the military, and other places. We did not come back because we couldn't live. We couldn't make a living. So that's what happened to the legacy problem. And the other thing, there are big corporations that are coming in and buying up homes. I don't know, maybe you can tell me. What is the ownership in Glenwood now? Do you have any idea, Commissioner? The percentage of people who own their own homes here in Glenwood.
So around
Just roughly.
around the hurricane time, as you and I
Report of my
it was about 70%. It was high renter in this area.
It's high renters.
Yeah.
Most of the people that live in Glenwood now rent. They don't own their homes.
So
And they're air property, and what happened, there are big corporations coming in, buying up this property, because when I did come back, I lived in California, I had my own home. I know a lot of people here that lived in Chicago, New York,
So,
Texas,
Mr.
and they didn't come back.
do you have a question about the idea of
What he's
how we
talking
can move
about
forward?
is, you grew up, your brother lived in the same house. Okay? We didn't come back. There was nothing. We couldn't earn a living. If there was a way to earn a decent living in Panama City, a lot of people wouldn't leave, wouldn't have left. They would have stayed. I went there to college. There was no way I would come back here because I couldn't earn a living. And so a lot of people, grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts and uncles, died and left property because all of the kids and grandkids had moved away and had homes somewhere else. And that's what the problem we had here.
Well, I don't think Glenwood is solo in that. I think that's an issue across many urban communities today. We have been conditioned to believe better exists somewhere else. And, you know, if our better is defined by access to stuff, then better does exist somewhere else. I say this to you, is that in today, there are teachers in this community, there are firefighters in this community, there are people who are looking for affordable opportunities that live.
Cannot go back home right now.
Well, again,
Somebody tell me, what is the average income in Glenwood right now?
right.
About 27,000, 25,000. What can you do with that kind of income? There's no way. My sons wouldn't come back. They went away. They wouldn't come back here. Because
I
and
guess
that is the problem that we have.
So how do we solve for better?
How do we solve for making this a destination where people want to be? And I also heard you say that you have corporations that are buying up property. And what I would say to that is we need to educate people so that if they have the capacity to sell or the desire to sell, they are getting the best value for their property. But what I'm finding is that we will sell it for pennies on the dollar. And if I'm a corporation, that's what I'm there to do. I'm there to make money. I mean, again, what we have done is I can't stop anybody from selling anything in historic Eastside or any other communities that we work with. My responsibility is to give them all of the adequate information because, again, what's your name, sir?
Matthew Shack.
Mr. Shack.
Yes.
If you have never seen $25,000 in your entire life, and somebody is going to come to you and say, Mr. Shack, I'm going to give you $25,000 for this. So, again, but the property is worth $125,000. That's where I'm supposed, because guess what happened? The moment you make corporations pay more for what they thought they could get for cheap, they don't want it. And so, again, that's the problem is that
the people who own the property are no longer alive. I went somewhere else. We didn't come back. There was a whole generation of people who left here.
How do we solve for that? How do we solve for that? How do we solve for that?
But the problem was, okay, let me.
Why don't you and I talk afterwards? Why don't you and I talk about that afterwards?
It was during segregation.
Okay. Well, we ain't segregated no more.
That's right. And I went somewhere else, and I was successful. And a lot of people in here, I see the faces of people who went, and they lived quite well because they couldn't come back. When you got out of high school and went to college, they couldn't come back. All you had was a teacher, a janitor, or you worked on the beach.
Well, I see you real passionate about this. Why don't we talk about this afterwards? So
our neighborhood was ruined. Nobody wanted to live here.
Okay.
That's why a lot of us didn't come back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Michelle Bryant. I want to first start off by saying that was a really good presentation. I actually have been following you guys for a couple of years on social media. A friend of mine who was running for Senator Angie Nixon from Jacksonville actually she was telling me about your organization. So I'm glad to see you here in the beautiful Panama City. So my question and comment is, with your presentation, I see huge potential in a community like Glenwood. Unfortunately, the presentation before your presentation that was provided by the city of Panama City, it doesn't align, in my opinion. The things that we've heard from the community side about MLK is that it's a lot of no and a lot of it can't happen. Over the years, several organizations and people within the community have come forth with ideas, have come forth with a vision to provide, tying into what Mr. Shack said, the opportunity to bring jobs back to our city, which would create that viability of people wanting to come back. As someone that left away, went off to college military, I own property in Glenwood, but my actual home I don't have outside of the city limits because I couldn't find what I wanted in Glenwood. So my question is, how do we bring a program such as this to a Glenwood where we can put emphasis on allowing people that are from the community to reinvest, also bringing people to the table that have previously wanted to invest. What comes to mind is Dr. Bryant, who was a project here, thank you, to MLK. I believe the Williams here in the room and several other people wanted to invest and build right here in this community. So how do we bridge that gap, create that synergy with local officials? Because the community, we're ready. We're ready. So how do we bridge? The first question. The second question is, with the restrictions that we have, what can we do? What other alternatives might be available to help push that need? Because the presentation was great. We've been here. This is probably the 6th meeting in 6 years about what we want on MLK. Kind of tired of talking about it. Let's move forward with some action and get some businesses. Thank you.
So this is what we did. I knew that it was going to, for the work that we were intentional about doing, I didn't want to get hamstrung by governmental processes. However, what we did do was, many of the lots that you see the homes being built on were all surplus properties from the city of Jacksonville. And so we just had to make a commitment to affordability. So we started with the residential piece of it first. And by building capacity within the neighborhood, again, with those people, they will advocate for themselves and what they want. Again, you know, if you've lived in a neighborhood, particularly like this, for a number of years, you become a little apathetic about the political process. We've been meeting child for 6 years, and them people ain't gonna do nothing, so, you know, I ain't gonna worry about it. You know, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. So I started with people who that wasn't their experience. And then their infectious nature for my new house in this new neighborhood and what it needs to do and what I need became infectious for their neighbors. And so that's how we addressed the process. I addressed it from the inside out rather than the outside in. Because there's always going to be opposing political parties, and if one party says one thing, the other party is mandated that they got to be against it. I wanted to do less with that and get to what I knew was a solution. Again, the city government had properties in these neighborhoods that they wanted to dispose of. They went in the business of managing properties, particularly in this neighborhood. So they wanted to get rid of them. They only wanted a commitment of building affordability on the property. And that was my game plan. So that's how we did the work. And you did see one other person on the video, but when the mayor had to choose people to participate in our community benefits agreement board with the Jaguars, she chose 2 people from the neighborhood, and it just so happened to be 2 people from Project Boots. And so that's how we were able to do it. I had very little, if anything, to do with that grocery store, but it came from the inside out. But it came with people who were not sort of hamstrung by stuff that happened 60 years ago. It just was, it was applicable, but then it wasn't. Because again, they didn't bring all of that to the table. That was influenced, at the barbershop when Mr. Shack was in there. Hey boy, you better remember this. This is what these people did 20 years ago. This is what these people did 60 years ago. But for residents that we were helping to facilitate being there, that wasn't their burden. And so that's how we were able to get a thing done with the city being a part of the process. And, I also got to give credit to the city of Jacksonville because they provided some of the resources for our home repair program. And so they had money in their CDBG dollars. They were able to use those to help us navigate the home repair program. So they were an equitable partner in this process. And again, I didn't talk about things that traditionally would allow us to get hamstrung around what couldn't be done. I needed to be able to get a thing done, and I knew that was going to hamstring the process. So that's how we were able to actually move this process along. And now, resources aren't necessarily my challenge. We have, we started off with 5 people in Project Boots. 5 people. Now we got a waiting list of over 100 people. And we literally only choose 10. I guess this year I'm going to go up to 20. But we only chose 10. And we're on our 5th cohort of people who are saying, I want to be down. And it's not like we give two things that we did. We gave them $10,000 and we gave them a say what their houses look like. I don't believe in this idea you can ask people to move like into a community like Glenwood or historic East Side and put a house up and say, hey, this is what you can get. You gotta at least give the people a say in the process. Because what they will do to you when you do that is they can comfortably afford this. They will go to the far end of affordability just so they felt like they were empowered around what their money can afford them. So that's what we were, again, another one of those things that we were intentional about. That house that you saw Dr. Jameson in, I had zero, and again, Dr. Jameson is my best friend. When he said his house was gonna look like a box, I was like, dude, you crazy. You crazy. Like, I couldn't even visualize that was gonna be functional. And now it's, a centerpiece of the neighborhood. Buses ride past his house and stop. But I gave him the power to say what his monthly payment, because I don't catch none of those monthly payments. He pays them every month. So he should have a say in what it looked like. What we do to people with limited resources, we say you ought to be glad that I'm building you a house that you can afford. Well, no, they ought not be glad because they got options. They just go rent an apartment in a good neighborhood as they define good. So that's how we were able to do it.
For starters, this is a good neighborhood. It's been decimated by various factions that have taken place here. One, DOT came in and took Martin Luther King, which decimated the businesses. Two, the racial component has changed in this community. And I witnessed that because of the school that is in this community. It has changed. The demographics have changed drastically. Additionally, it started out with racial gentrification. We are now in economic gentrification. People are catching Hades trying to get a piece of property to put up a house. Now, Michelle asked you about businesses. Your concern or your focus seems to be homes. But if you don't have a community where you have what is considered good homes, then the schools suffer. And that's happening in this community right now. So how do you resolve that and or give a solution to such? And I take exception with your term affordable housing because there is no such thing. That's a misnomer. It's only what a person can afford. But how do you make an attempt to resolve the components that I gave you?
So I think affordable is relative. Again, because there's this thing called Ponte Vedra Beach in Jacksonville, and that's not affordable for me. My affordability clearly stops at the entrance of the Matthews Bridge before you get over to the south side. So let's be clear, I get affordability. I think many of the things that you are talking about, I agree with you 110%. But remember, I started off this conversation talking about love, meaning I do this in the spirit of others. Because if we could, we are not going back to the days of the 60s. My grandfather owned a gas station. As soon as you came off of Interstate 95 on Monroe and Davis Street, I had everything that I needed as a young boy in that neighborhood. We're not going back there. No matter how much we long for yesteryear, it's just simply not happening. We have convinced our young people that, they got options and they exercise their options. And so I believe that we have to look at what's in front of us and start from there. What's in front of us is what we got. And this does not mean that we forget about what sustained us over the years. It means that
what's in front of us and how do we move this thing forward. And so, again, I go back to schools. I graduated from the William Marion Raines High School in Jacksonville, Florida, and anybody who is anybody graduated from the William Marion Raines High School in Jacksonville, Florida. But if you talk to my parents, they will tell you anybody who was anybody graduated from Stanton High School or Matthew Gilbert in Jacksonville, Florida. Stanton now is a preparatory school. It is one of the best schools in the entire United States. And very few of the young people in that school look like you and I. So no matter what my parents long for, it ain't coming back. And so what we have to find is what does moving forward look like with our elders in this room influencing what the future looks like. And so for me, the future looks like, how do we get people with capacity who can take up the mantle that you and you have laid for us? How do we get them back into this neighborhood as a destination where they want to be? How do we do it? And again, I just showed you what our blueprint was. And our blueprint centered around affordable housing, meaning that if you are a teacher, you can live here. If you are a first-year firefighter and you don't want to have to work overtime where it feels like you're working 24 hours a day, you can live here. We need greater capacity on our block because I've seen a lot of kids that come through this door right now, and they walk right in there and they pass the STEAM room, they pass the other engineering room, they went to the basketball court because in their mind, in order to escape here, I got to be an entertainer. I got to be able to put a ball in a hoop. I got to be able to score touchdowns. I got to be able to rap. And so I'm asking the question, how do we get that back to where a teacher says, this is going to be my first house in the community of Glenwood? That's the conversation we have to have, and we have to build upon that. And again, I'm just showing you all what we have been able to do, and I've done it from a residential standpoint, which led to the economic standpoint, because people build businesses based upon the idea that they can make some money. And that's what people have found with a grocery store on the avenue now. And there's going to be several other businesses. And fortunately for me, you know, we get to invest, or we don't get to invest. I take that back. If it's been around for a couple of years and has tax returns, I get to invest capital into that. But again, people start businesses where they think they can make money, and it's generally precipitated by people in the neighborhood looking for a service. One of the things I asked the commissioner when we pulled up, I said, you know, you all don't want fast food restaurants. Well, why not use some of the surplus properties on MLK to have a food truck park? You know, why not do that? I mean, again, you know, that the young lady that I met in here, that's how she got started. There are several businesses that got started from a food truck. So I think that, again, I don't know what the water deal is, and she did answer me with a really good answer. You know, but those things make sense. But how do we mitigate that piece of it so that it can get to, because I'm looking for solutions. I'm not looking for no. I'm looking for solutions. Yes.
Hello, my name is Irma. Nice to meet you. I have been a resident of Glenwood since 1999. I moved to Florida from Kentucky at the end of '99. I purchased my first home in Glenwood in 2004. I've raised my first set of kids here, earned 3 college degrees, and am a professional in this community, making nice. So I was just walking through Glenwood the other night, because I walk in the morning and I walk at night, and I was just telling the Lord, thank you for my walkable community. Because when I first bought my home in 2004, it wasn't the best walkable community. But over the years, it has changed. So being grateful for where I've came from and being grateful for where I am now. And knowing that my little house that I am in, I want to leave it as a legacy property for my children. But I also want to buy a second home in Glenwood and build it up for the same reason you said earlier, so others can see that you can do that. Because there's actually some very nice homes tucked back in Glenwood, but I don't want to tuck my nice new big home in Glenwood. I want to make it big so people can see. But with all of that being said, because I work hard and I'm raising my second set of kids, so why not? Why not? And why not me? And why can't I have what others have in other areas of Bay County right in Glenwood? So with that being said, and being a professional in this area, you mentioned the grocery store earlier, but you never said what type of grocery store, and if it happens, like when will the development start, and what type of grocery store do you all have in the area of Jacksonville that you was talking about?
So Deb's is privately owned. It's not a chain, it's privately owned. So Joe Deb's family owns that grocery store. It's actually ran by Goodwill, but it's literally a family-owned grocery store. I think for us, and I'm guilty of this as well, we get so wrapped up into brands. I gotta have Publix, Harris Teeter, Winn-Dixie, anything less ain't a grocery store. And we have to move off of that. I mean, again, I'm an entrepreneur as well, and it takes investment, in a grocery store. I said before, I use community as not as a destination, but we have to be the community that we want to see. We aren't having a conversation around capital. We're having a conversation around somebody else doing a grocery store. And that to me is the telltale sign. If you want a grocery store, why aren't we having the conversation with a group of entrepreneurs around, hey, our community wants a grocery store, let's run the numbers and see if we can put a grocery store in here. I mean, I did get a chance to tour the Sankofa project up there relative to the grocery store. I don't have no opinion one way or the other. If that's what y'all want, that's what y'all want. But again, if there is the opportunity, that's the conversation we should be having around entrepreneurs who, from this neighborhood, who have the capacity to run. And I've seen businesses along the corridor that look like they've been there for a minute. Like those are legacy businesses. So that says to me that you have people from this neighborhood who are entrepreneurs and have proven that they can run a business. So that should be the catalyst.
Yeah, I just wonder. We had everything you said until they put in MLK. It was a corridor out there with all businesses, motel, hotels, service station, and they put in MLK and destroyed everything. We wouldn't have had to do anything.
I get it. But MLK is there, and it don't seem like it's going nowhere. So
I have the answers to, and I know Mr. Shepard. My name is Patty Sunday. Thank you for coming. Welcome, Dr. Cohen. So nice to meet you. I did a study during COVID of the migration patterns of Glenwood. And so I do have the answers that you're asking. There were two significant things that happened. After the success of the 40s and 50s of the separate community and separate economy, those who were doing well were seeking larger parcels. Because as you know, in the Deep South, the parcels were small. The very first parcels were very small.
yes.
So there was, I think at the time, it was 40, and it might have been up to 80, folks moved to Lynn Haven and built their second house as they were having more and more success. They may have left the small house, they may have rented it, but they moved to Lynn Haven and started building cement block houses. Then there was another migration of African American people, formerly from Glenwood, that went to Callaway. And this was returning veterans that were able to pull down the veterans' mortgage funds. And it was the same reason. I can go to Callaway, I can get a bigger lot, I can build a bigger house, and at 0% interest, as you know, it could go farther. So those were two of the migration things that happened. I do economic development and housing for a living, and I live here. And my niece is back here. Ashley, wave your hand. She's a school bus driver, and she's a homeowner in Glenwood. And I guided her in that process, got her the $50,000 down payment because it fit the budget. And when she moved in, it was a bunch of her school bus grandmas and grandpas on her street that recognized her as the school bus driver that would get out and help pick up the children. So it's been a beautiful thing. I'm looking at your financial report. Oh, the main thing I want to point out about you and give you a compliment, you are a donor to your own organization. Thank you.
I can't ask people for money if I ever pay.
Right, I see you right on here. Oh, okay. So, I know Michelle. So that is so impressive to me. I also see some of the people that are funding you, and I've written grants to some of these entities. You know that the DuPont Foundation is right here next to us in Gulf, and they're very generous. Yes. There's a bunch of them, and the Jaguars and the NFL. These are all people I also do business with. So my question is, as a sales professional, I'm a buyer. I'm like, let's do it, right? I'm a citizen of Panama City. I'm looking at your report, and I'm seeing, well, this is the one you have up, 24-25. You had $3,900,000 in revenue, this 105 for that, all that good stuff. 32 million in lending, got it. You know I've done those capital starts, new market tax credits, all that. We're not as big as Jacksonville. How are we going to fund this?
Again, I think part of it, I will tell you how we funded Project Boost. So we funded Project Boost, quite frankly, with our initial core came from a $100,000 grant, proof of concept. Somebody gave me to do Project Boost, for the group, to be exact. And when it turned out to prove itself, you know, money hadn't been my challenge thus far.
Money follows good work.
Right, money follows success.
Yes.
With our home repair program, that money came from CDBG dollars from the city of Jacksonville.
Not the federal fund, because you know there's been a federal fund that runs through for electrification, all that. On the bottom. And I'll tell you,
then the second pot of money we got to do heirs property with the city of Jacksonville came from SHIP dollars. So that's what, so those were the three pots of money that we've been able to do the work out of.
We have those. We have those.
You do?
Yeah, and we're in a budget, little crunchy time, so we just want to be careful. As a taxpayer, I'm saying that as a professional.
And also, this is how you would qualify for, we had an income threshold on the home repair program.
Right.
And so you could not, the minimum, the maximum amount you could get done was like $25,000. When it was gone, it was gone. And then with the with the heirs property work and those SHIP dollars, we have an arrangement with Three Rivers Legal Services. They charge us $8,500 or $7,500 per case. So we provide them with volume.
Got it.
And that's how we are able to fund.
We got $1 million after the hurricane, and we ran through it so quickly.
Yes.
On the bottom of your financial report, you show that you've done 300 houses. That's not last year, right?
No.
Okay, that's the accrual. You have 317 housing uses and 27. You didn't do that in 1 year. This is from the inception.
300 houses on what? For home repair or heirs property?
Housing, 317, home repair, 27.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, I'm doing this little health checkup, and I'm excited. As a taxpayer and a professional, I'm excited.
And again, one of the things that I believe in, everything has value. So when I repair your house, I'm looking at the new appraised value of your house. When I do your heirs property, I'm calculating that based upon the amount of dead equity that resided in the house when you got done. So.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lynn Sharia Barnes. I live here in Glenwood in an air property. The reason that I stay in the air property is because, like Mr. Shack said, my grandmother passed away, and before I wanted her hard work to go away, I moved in. I raised my children, and just like Ms. Irma was saying, I'm raising my second set means I'm raising my grandchildren. I was waiting for I think it was supposed to be a presentation, but I guess the slide was the presentation as far as what the development was gonna be, as far as the green infrastructure, the parking, and the Watson Bayou. As far as Watson Bayou, I would like to see something done with that because I do live behind 80 Harris. It's a deep curve. I don't know if you were driven around that earlier today. So I live behind there, and Watson Bayou runs along that property that's there, and there's a lot of snakes that's coming out of there, so I would definitely like to see something done there. As far as parking, I don't really see a necessity for parking because, you know, like we said, there's no businesses there around here to need parking at this point. For the green infrastructure, as long as it's not a recessed pool, like at the end of Martin Luther King, because there's been kids that's been drowning in there, you know, I wouldn't like to see anything like that. I do want to see something that can encourage the youth to go past the basketball court to be able to go and do some other things. I would like to see a grocery store, not, you know, anything like Walmart because we have one here. I mean, I would take Winn-Dixie, and that way that could fix, you know, the person's need for the lottery ticket, or if they want some beer, for the people that protected that, because that was part of the conversation. I mean, at this point, I'll take a piggy with me. You know, we just need something here in this community that we don't have to go and spend our dollars and transportation and gas going to provide for our families. The last thing was, I am one of those people that, I'm a veteran. I graduated from college. I have the means to be able to go and live in Callaway, Lynn Haven, probably Bay Point if I wanted to, but you know, right. But I want to be here in this community because this is the community that raised me. You know, I want to see it come back to life. I want to see some good things, you know, happen here. My grandchildren, they attend the 80 Harris Head Start. I was excited about that. My dad was the principal at Oscar Patterson. You know, Ms. Williams was talking about that and how, you know, things can be done different and done with that. I have a legacy that I would like to see continue. You know, I would like to see the house next door to me, the lady that passed away, you know, her children aren't doing as good, and you know, it's pretty much abandoned, and so I'm having to pay somebody to cut her grass to keep anything from coming in my yard to affect my grandchildren. So it's a lot of good things. You do have a good ideas, you know, there's a lot of concerns, you know, as people have come up and say. But thank you for your presentation. Thank you for giving us the idea.
I would say to you, you are the example of everything that we are talking about. You don't have to move away, but it's your capacity and your availability that allows those young people that your grandkids play with to see a possibility. That's exactly what we're talking about. Yes, sir.
Seriously, I always come in here to talk about giving up the land. The reason why I'm saying this is because we got about 20 or 30 black people here building homes. The average home we building is under $250,000 in Florida. I think Sheila Franklin them providing some kind of financial stuff for them. And we wanted to see how can we possibly have our hands on it before the other people come and get it in our neighborhood.
I think that's a reasonable request. One of the things that I will share with you all, my suggestion to them is, you know, to have that conversation around city available parcels that a home or duplex or a triplex or quad could be built on in this community. I mean, again, our city didn't do that. And so I wind up having to, the properties that we got from one of the, you know, the biggest, our city acquiesced our affordable housing strategy to 3 or 4 companies, which, you know, I'm challenged by that. And so in these communities, I had to get the land from them. You all have the opportunity to do something different with that piece, with that body of work. But again, I think your request is reasonable. Quite frankly, particularly if you have the capacity to build on them already, and you've proven that you can do it. I don't see anything wrong with that. Yes, ma'am.
He led into the question I had. So how long did it take for you to acquire that property from that organization?
Immediately. Like it was, I actually went to them to ask them to build the houses for us. But they basically said, this is what we will build you up if you want to work with us. And that just wasn't going to work. Not for the people that I was trying to attract back. And so, you know, they were like, well, I'll just sell you the land and you can get somebody else to do it. And I wind up finding somebody else who understood what we were trying to do. The beauty of it all is that I had access to the capital to provide them to build the house. And so I didn't need a bank to finance it. I was the bank. So that's how we were able to do it. So it wasn't a real difficult process. And the only mandate that the city of Jacksonville had on it was, you know, it had to be affordable. And we were able to, because I was lending the money, that's the mandate that I have as an organization, is that the houses have to be affordable. So it checked everybody's box.
And my second question is, when you walk out of this room today, what is the next step?
Good question.
There you go, right there.
Thank you for coming in. So to answer that question, the next step, Karen Landry has volunteered to facilitate meetings as we go forward. There is input that's needed as the city is developing a land disposition policy. If you watched our city commission meeting last night, you know that was discussed. Commissioner Robert Hughes has been working by trade as a realtor, working to categorize all of the lots that the city owns and giving some insight. So it's a process in motion about getting the lots that's available. And I did reach out to builders in this community and ask you to be here, so thank you for coming to be a part of the process. It takes time, as we all know, but time is moving forward now. We've got momentum. And it's not something that the city can do all by itself. And so we do need you all to be committed to being a part of that. And those of you who would like to be at the next meeting, we'll make a public announcement. But now we want to work with that core group of people who will help us reach out. Because as I look around the room, most of us in the room now aren't necessarily the people that we saw on the project booths, but we know who they are. And so I guess the question I first have to you all, is Project Boost something you'd like to see us move forward to continue to make happen here? No? I see a no up front. I see some yeses. Okay. Okay. So moving forward, yes ma'am.
Good question. Isn't Project Boots kind of like the SHIP program that we already have? Not trying to be funny, but I forgot to say that I bought my first home through the SHIP program, through Miss Sheila Ware. And exactly what he was talking about was the program that I went through back in 2004. And my house now is almost paid off. So isn't that like almost the same kind of program?
So yes, we do have a similar program.
Oh, okay.
And there is some discussions now about diminishing that program in our city.
Oh.
So that is something that if we want to move forward, we need citizen voices coming to be a part of that discussion. I see Mr. Peters, and then I'll go back to you, Lynn.
In terms of moving forward, when the city does dispose of these properties, some income will come in back to the city. Is the city prepared to make a decision that the funds go back into the housing support program, like SHIP or that Ms. Ware is running, and Dr. Cohen talked about using? So are we going to be making that decision in the city budget?
So I can tell you that 1/5 of the commission is committed to what you're saying.
Right,
so we need 2 others.
3/5.
Yes.
What is
Yes.
the position of your fellow commissioners on?
So the mayor has made public his position that we need to diminish our housing and community services division. And that's part of a several point program that he has put out into the community. And so as we're moving forward with the budget for next year, it is important that those who have thoughts, concerns, be a part of what's going on and have your voices heard. I can tell you I'm 1/5 of 5 votes. So, yes, ma'am.
We have Habitat Humanity.
Yes.
We have the housing program. We have the program that you're involved with at Macedonia Baptist Church. That's what that sounds like to me. So, you know.
That's what sounds like to you.
What did the doctor say?
The closest we have to something like that is what was just said, which is our housing.
Sounds like to me. So.
Yeah, I'm clarifying that.
But given that, how does this differ? Because I keep hearing incremental development in my head as you all are talking. So how does this differ from incremental development? And what is the benefit of using this program as a solo?
Don't have an answer. That's to be explored. It was introduced this evening.
What is how is this program different than what the housing department for the city is? And can those be, can there be a collaboration for them to work with more success?
I will say this, in this neighborhood that we work in, there is Habitat for Humanity. In Jacksonville, it's called Habitats. So there is that. There is, and Habitats has a income qualification that you have to meet. There's another program, probably like the one the young lady talked about, that's steps above Habitat, and that gets to 120 or so % of AMI. I did not want any income qualifications associated with the work that we are doing. Again, to me, when you put a bunch of Habitat homes in a neighborhood, and it's, please do not, that's concentrated poverty. That's concentrated poverty. And so, and then when you look at the appraised value of Habitat homes, they don't necessarily appraise. And so what I wanted to do was have a true mixed income neighborhood. And you don't get to mix if everybody's at the bottom. Right. And so what we did was I said, ain't no income. If you're a millionaire and you want to be in Project Boost and you're going to go through this 10 weeks and you committed to living here as an owner-occupied home for 3 years, you can get my $10,000. And that's what we were able to do. So let everybody else have, that person. I want this person here because, again, if I'm truly being honest, the person down on this end of the economic train, they're trying to be here.
Right.
And what better place do you get real hands-on information is when you're walking past somebody's house who you aspire to be.
That part.
So that's how we were able to do it.
So last question, and we'll talk about our next steps. Yes, ma'am.
So I appreciate you sharing that, and that goes along the lines of why I thought this meeting was about economic development, right? Because I hear people see nice homes or move that area, but I would love to have a place where people can walk to work, still afford that nice home. So what I like about your program is that it helps people get to that level. It's also here in Little, even economic development to get people to that level. And hope we can get a $10,000 loan on the business side from the city of Panama City and its organization in Jacksonville to bring that economic development to Little.
All right. So there's a lot in the mix. What he just described is private capital. There's public dollars. It's going to take a mix of all of that. But certainly those who are in the room who are in business understand that it takes money to make money, number one. Number two, the talk about housing is that you've got to have a customer base. So if you look at, for instance, how Sweet Bay was developed, or how any big development starts when they start with a big blank slate of land, they put houses in first. Housing, apartments, townhomes, they build the proximity of shoppers, of the consumer base. Then they bring in the stores. And so our challenge, we're already developed. So the incremental development is about filling in the infield development, small scale developers. When you don't have a big slate of blank land to start, then Those developers who do that aren't necessarily looking to do different small pieces. And then whenever you decide that you want to develop, you've got to do the math, and it has to pencil. You've got to have the land, all the land that you need to meet the requirements to make that initial investment. And so the conversation tonight was one to say, look at the MLK corridor, see how much land that the city has, but also see what the challenges are, whether you're a small developer or whether you're trying to do a big project, and what it's going to take. So putting our minds and hearts together to work toward that with forward movement, that's what this conversation is intended to be. So Dr. Cohen may be around for just a few minutes to answer any questions, but we've had a lot of meetings, and you're right. You're absolutely right. I want us to move forward now, putting our hearts together, and I love the way you introduced how you come, with love, with intention, with agency, with courage. That's how we need to move forward. And so as we do that, we will be looking at project groups, how to keep what we want to build on, and then how to build on that working together. Are there any closing? Oh, I do have an announcement. Several folks have asked about Joe Moody Harris Park, and the groundbreaking for the for the development that's going to be there is coming up August 4th at 9 a.m. We're moving forward, getting Joe Moody Harris Park Phase 1 open again, so that we can go there and play and have fun. I rarely get a nod from Ms. Brenda Lewis-Williams, but thank you so much, ma'am. All right, as we say in some other circles, are all hearts clear? Let's go forward, work together. Each one teach one, make an effort to reach one. Thank you so much.